Yeah, so Toby, look, thank you so much for joining us. For everyone who's here attending, if people have got questions for Toby while we're chatting, we'll hopefully have a bit of time at the end, but please feel free to post any question in the chat so that we can keep an eye on what people might want to ask about. And what we might do if you want is just make people actual speakers so that they can ask their question in person when we come to kind of the Q&A section, if that's all right, Toby.
Yeah.
And we're aiming for kind of an hour, so we'll see how we do overall. I know we sent through some questions in advance, so we'll start running through them and see where we are from there. So I don't know if you just wanted to start off by just introducing yourself, just quickly talking about what your role is, and then we can kind of take it from there.
Of course. So I'm president of UTAS, Universal Television Alternative Studio. And we're the largest supplier of non-scripted or alternative content, it's called out here, for the NBC Universal ecosystem. I'm part of a larger studio group known as USG, Universal Studios Group. There's 4 or 5 studios within that group, but we're the only non-scripted one. I'm based in Los Angeles. I work on the Universal lot, dream come true. If only I'd have known that back when I was at Ravensbourne. And we're producing around 16 series this year for NBC Universal. And then we have countless projects in development at various stages of development, either at the presentation or pilot stage. But this is our busiest year yet. We have a staff of about 30, but this week alone, we have 2 big shows that are being produced. So we have hundreds of people working on projects. So I think this week alone, there's around 500 employees working for UTAS, I guess is the way to look at it. Yeah, so that's me, I guess.
Cool. And I guess maybe it would help people to understand kind of like what that role is like by talking about some of the key developments you've been responsible for. So I guess what is it that you've done that you feel has been the most successful, or what is it that you feel really shows off your role in, within the alternative studio?
Well, it's a broad question.
It is. Jim, I'm sorry for that.
No, it's all good. I'm just trying to think of because I've only been in this job for nearly 2 years, just under 2 years. But I've been in the industry for 21 years. I'm going to age myself, for 21 years now. I think I graduated in 2000. And throughout that period of time, I've had various roles. I was freelancing as a producer or director in the business for 14 of those years. And then I moved over into the corporate side out here in Los Angeles. And I should probably talk about how I got out here and all that as well. But so I definitely am able to look at things that I'm really proud of across my career. Early on, I was very, very fortunate to work on a show that was called Pop Stars on ITV. And I was in my infancy, it was in my one of my first roles. And most of you won't know what that is. But for any of you that are a bit older, Pop Stars was the show that birthed Pop Idol. Pop Idol birthed X Factor and ultimately American Idol, which I then came out to the US and was a part of for a few years, which has been, a monster of a hit. So being on shows that are paradigm shifting like that, and for me, what I get the biggest kick out of is when they're in the zeitgeist and hearing people just talk about them. I could be in a line, this has happened to me, I've been in a line at Starbucks, grabbing my morning coffee and hearing the people in front of me talk about the show that I produced that was on the night before. It gives me the most satisfaction out of anything, just knowing that people are enjoying it. But then I did a show for BBC Three many moons ago called House of Tiny Tearaways, which I think might be coming back in the UK. So I've heard it might be coming back. And that was a show about families, dysfunctional children, families with a problem with their child, and they would move into a house with a psychologist that would help treat the children. And it was set up like a Big Brother type show. It was all fixed rig. And we built the house. We built a physical house. 3 families moved in, each with a unique problem with their child, and they worked through their problems across the week. And I think it may have won an award somewhere, that show, but my point is I got the best kick out of that because we were helping people. It sounds really lame, but I've done so many types of programs now, and that one in particular had the biggest effect on me because we were solving problem children. And there was I'll never forget one girl that was on that show called Mia, and she had a medical issue. She was clarified or labeled as a headbanger. When she was stressed as a 3-year-old, she would bang her head against the wall. It was horrible to watch. And I remember sitting in the gallery as we were producing this episode, watching her across the week with this amazing psychologist, Dr. Tanya Byron, help her and her family. And we were all sitting in the we call it the booth out here, the gallery or the booth, crying. And it's never left me. That's never left my brain. And I actually gave my daughter, her middle name is Mia, because of that journey I was on with that. And so that was a show it was an entertainment show for BBC 3, but ultimately it was about fixing kids. And so we did something really special there. So that has never left me and sits with me forever. And then if I fast forward to perhaps the most recent thing, was a show called The Titan Games with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. We call him DJ. Massive show that I believe is on Netflix in the UK, but out here it was on NBC.
Yeah.
And that came about in a fantastic way, where NBC asked, the company I was previously working at was called A. Smith and Company, and they're famous for making American Ninja Warrior, Hell's Kitchen out here. And NBC had asked to partner with A. Smith and Company and develop a new physical competition show right when I was joining the company. So I was tasked with the team to try and figure it out. We went through various iterations of developing that show, always thinking, wouldn't it be great to have The Rock hosting this show? Eventually got to a concept after a long journey that we were happy with, the network was happy with, took it, managed to get a meeting with The Rock. This is the beautiful thing about being at NBC Universal, partnering with them at the time, is you can get to anyone. So we had a meeting with Dwayne's team, shared the concept, and then discovered that he has actually been thinking about something like this himself. It was really into the idea. So the ideas merged and the Titan Games was born. And going through that process of a blank piece of paper, dreaming up these crazy obstacles and Mount Olympus, the giant end game. And by the way, I grew up loving Gladiators, the TV show, and it definitely influenced me and some of my colleagues. Check it out if you haven't seen it. It probably doesn't stand up now. It's from the 80s, 90s. If you were to watch it, it's super cheesy. But as a kid, I loved it, and it definitely influenced some of the creative. But partnering with The Rock, Dwayne's team at $7 is the name of his company, getting under his skin, understanding what it means for him to make a show of this size, and delivering that for NBC was a dream come true. And I remember standing in the middle of our arena that we built and having a real moment because it was massive. You just can't comprehend how big it was. I remember standing in the middle of that one night. We would shoot overnight, and just having a moment and pausing and thinking, wow, like this has come from nothing. And so just the journey of a blank piece of paper to screen is probably the other thing I'm exceedingly proud of. And I've done a few of those. They're not all like that. Sometimes you inherit a show and you produce it, but that one in particular was about 3 years, 2.5 years from inception to on screen. And we've since done a second season and hoping to do many more.
It is a great show. It is a fantastic show.
You know, another influence of that one would be World's Strongest Man. I used to watch that on Channel 4 on Sunday mornings. And so it's a combination of World's Strongest Man and certainly a bit of Gladiators and then something new, because there's no one like Dwayne Johnson, who, by the way, is the nicest individual in the world. His team, for that whole journey with him and his team, has been nothing but amazing. He's exactly who you want him to be. He's a true gent. He's just the nicest man.
Fantastic. Another broad question then. We'll just
All
do
right.
that for the whole afternoon. So obviously you've had that massive success. You've seen that kind of thing go from like a piece of paper and get it there. What is it you feel you still can achieve in the role that you've got? What is it that you're hoping to achieve within the role you have at the moment?
Broad. I think if I'm honest with myself, it's probably just hits. It's coming up with big shows that punch through the zeitgeist and ideally become global. If the true North Star is a show or a concept that does well here domestically, but then goes around the world internationally. And that's part of our Universal Studios group. We have an NBC formats team that sells globally, and that's very important to our business, but very important to me. I have been lucky enough to work on those shows that are global, like Family Fortunes is a great game show that's done well over the years in the UK. Over here, it's Family Feud. It's massive over here, and that's what brought me out, by the way, was that show. So yeah, creating a show or having a new show that becomes a successful domestic success is one thing, but ideally a global success. And the most recent one of those, just so you all understand what I'm talking about, was probably The Masked Singer. The Masked Singer is a big show over here. It's done well, I believe, on ITV in the UK. It's now global. It's the next big format that's traveling. And I think if we could do that, that would be incredible. That's very hard to do, but it's certainly something we're pursuing. But perhaps an easier goal is just to keep creating domestic success and keep growth. We're growing massively as a studio. We've never been busier. So more of the same, but we want some of those big tentpole hits that travel.
I know we're going to talk a little bit about the broader landscape of TV in a bit, but the Masked Singer was Korean originally, right? Is that right? If I'm remembering?
Yeah, that's right. So
was that an interesting? Sorry, yeah, I was going to say, was that an interesting experience to look kind of just across the world, I guess?
Yeah, we're always looking, because an idea can come from anywhere, from any of you, from me, doesn't matter whoever has the idea wins. Interestingly, The Masked Singer is a concept from Korea. A company out here got the rights, obtained the rights, which anyone could do. You just have to partner with the right person. And there's always an arms race for rights for things. But someone had the rights to that show, pitched it wide around LA, which is where I'm based, to all the major networks, broadcasters, and it didn't sell, just didn't go. And sometimes it's about timing. That also happened with American Idol, by the way. It was pitched wide, no one understood it, didn't go. The rights expired, and then an old colleague of mine, Craig Plestis, he has a company called Smart Dog Media. He was having lunch, maybe it was dinner, he was having a meal with his daughter in Koreatown, and on the TV in that restaurant was The Masked Singer in Korea. And he was trying to interact with his daughter, and she was ignoring him. She was glued to the television. He said, "What are you doing?" Just staring. She was just staring. And he realized there was something there. He had the initiative to go, that's bonkers. What is that? And he pursued it, discovered it was available, obtained the rights after they had lapsed with the previous people, and then pitched it wide again. At this time, at Fox, the network out here, there was a new head buyer in alternative, another Brit called Rob Wade, lovely guy, another friend. And Rob was looking for the first big show under his new job. And in comes Craig with this concept, and it spoke to him. And so off they went, right? And so that just proves it's all about timing. Same concept. And it's been executed brilliantly, and Rob and Craig and that whole team have done that themselves. They've tweaked it to make it what it is, but the concept was the same. Celebrities singing in crazy disguises. And it just works because I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old who, by the way, may try and bombard us at some point because they'll be getting up any minute. It's early here. They love that show but have no idea what's going on. They just love the crazy costumes. And then we as adults, I think, enjoy it because we're trying to figure out who's in it. And the genius of it is when it's off air, you're still talking about it. You're still trying to figure out, you're still strategizing. Oh, I think it's so and so and so and so. It's water cooler. And so it's sort of game show meets music show, Guess Who, all bundled up. It's just lightning in a bottle. And yes, came from Korea, but so many shows come from overseas. Big shows over here that have done well. Dancing with the Stars, British. Hell's Kitchen, British. The Voice, Dutch. Big Brother, Dutch. And there's a lot of stuff that has come from overseas. So it's not unheard of for a format to be grabbed from international.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a great show. I was fascinated to try and figure out how it didn't leak who the stars were, and then I realized the reveal isn't done in front of the audience. I'm assuming.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So it was that cut was fantastic.
They're militant with it.
Yeah.
I know the process, and if you are the celebrity in the suit, you are picked up in a blacked out SUV over here. You drive on the lot, and before you even go on the lot, you're putting on this helmet and you wear a thing that says, "Do not talk to me," and you are escorted, and you're just cut off from the world from your front door. I guess the driver maybe knows who you are. I don't know. But you don't interact with any of the other cast members. They're militant with it, and they have to be. And even in the post house where they edit the show, I know that is partitioned off from the rest of the building where they may be cutting other projects. They just can't afford a leak because it would ruin.
Oh, absolutely.
Show. So they're very, very careful. But you're absolutely right. They shoot that last moment with no audience. It's a pickup, which is very sneaky, but it works well.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. I mean, it is just that thing, isn't it, of the behind the scenes of TV. It's just looking how all that's constructed to just give.
Yeah. Sure.
It's fantastic. So should we talk a little bit about, I guess, your experience at Ravensbourne, or at least like your advice you might have for students kind of just coming to the end of their degrees as well. So I guess, what was your experience like at Ravensbourne, and what do you think a degree in kind of TV production or broadcast gives you as an advantage coming into television?
Well, it was a very different Ravensbourne for me. We were in it, as I'm sure you are all aware. We were in Chislehurst. We're in a different location, different campus, which conveniently was 10 minutes from where I grew up. So I'm one of the sad students that never left home, even whilst at Ravensbourne. I stayed at home and just drove in. It was very, very easy. But I missed out on that true college experience because I wasn't away, which I kind of regret. But anyway, I digress. I think the biggest thing I took out of Ravensbourne, which absolutely helped me through my career, was just understanding each element of how a program is made. I was always interested in directing and producing. I was not particularly interested in lighting or editing. But and forgive me, I'm not completely familiar with the current course, but at least with me, we would touch all of it. And I really got to know how to edit. It was Lightworks at the time. It's dead now, but understanding how a show is made in post, audio, and then lighting. I was not interested in it at all, but doing that course, a 3-point lighting course, I think it was at the time, really helped me communicate with the people on set when it came to making a TV show. There were definitely elements that were not relevant to me. I remember there was one particular course we were taking apart a tape deck and understanding the inside of a tape deck. It drove me mad. I did not care how a tape deck worked. But that's life, isn't it? It's not all going to be tailored to you, and it's the same even in my job. There are days I love and I feel like this is what it's all about, and then there are days that are hideous and you go, why? This is not why I'm here. It's reality. So the course for me helped me, I wouldn't say master anything because I chose not to. It helped me understand everything. I even hosted a college project. I hate being in front of the camera. I really don't like it. But I at the time I was kind of interested, and I hosted a game show that we produced. There's a tape somewhere. You can find it, Jim, and it'll be incredibly embarrassing. I'm sure it's in the archives.
Yeah, I was going to say I'll have to dig through the archives.
It's a shocker. It's a shocker. But I directed a drama while I was there, and we cast them outside. I just touched everything in a more than a basic way, in enough to inform me later on in life. So I think that's probably the best of it, if I'm honest. And the one thing I wanted to share, I was thinking, like, what do I want to tell myself if it was 20 years ago? What's useful to you? And it's hard, but because we're all different. But what I managed to get right is when I came out of college, I was willing to start at the very bottom. I was then head of stationery at ITV. I was distributing pens and pencils to the different productions as a 21-year-old, I think. Which, having come out of college and studied broadcasting, feels a bit like, I've just done all this, why am I? But I was willing to do it to get into the right place, and ITV at the time was the best place to go. And I remember some of my fellow students not willing to do that. They came out thinking, no, I'm a director, I'm going to direct, I'm going to go, and look, good luck to them. I'm sure some of them it's worked out. I expect perhaps not for many. So I would say be hungry, be willing to start at the bottom, because that's just how it goes. But I wasn't there very long. I was there for a few months before someone realized I could operate a DV camera, and I was running around, and then I was suddenly helping edit something overnight. And then they realized, oh God, this guy's, he's not head of stationery, there's more here. And I had a meteoric rise up, and I was producing at 24, show running at 27. That doesn't happen very often. And I don't know, that may well be one of the youngest in broadcast television, but it's because of what Ravensbourne gave me. I'm a big believer of that.
That's amazing. Thank you. You alluded to the fact you started kind of at the bottom in kind of what, ITV and kind of production in kind of, you know, in the UK.
Yeah.
Thinking about that period of kind of moving through, you know, and kind of just embracing any opportunities that kind of came along. Can I ask kind of what you thought you did right, and maybe what you think you would have done differently if you'd had another chance?
Yeah.
And I'm really sorry to just say this. I'm just going to stop the video for a second because I need to check. Oh, sorted. I needed to check whether or not my mother-in-law had turned off the swimming pool that's just about to overflow. Sorry about that, Toby. It's very hot. It's very hot at the moment.
That's, okay, good. Okay. What I got right, and I don't know what you're all pursuing, so I hope this is relevant to you. But if you're here today, I'm guessing you're interested in the genre I entered, the non-scripted space. The hardest thing about the infancy of my career is that you're freelance, you're moving from job to job. You never know when the next job is going to start. You don't know how long. You can't enjoy. I never enjoyed any time off in between jobs because I was always worried about when the next job would start. Like, where am I financially? Is my career over? And I would say the most important thing to your survival at that level is not only doing a good job, you know, that's obvious, but relationships. The key to it is making good relationships with the people on each production you're on. Because once a production finishes, everyone disperses and goes on to various shows. And if you've made good relationships with enough people, you'll hear about the next job, or they'll even say, oh, there was this great guy over there, or she was brilliant and we should bring her over. And that helped me, that my first sort of 5-6 years, that kept me employed. And actually set me up, I think, to be a good leader as well. It's really about good relationships, treating people right. If you're a decent person and you're decent at your job, you'll survive in this industry. I think that's probably one of the key things to getting on, right? Good relationships. And I don't know about getting anything wrong. My philosophy is you learn from all your failures. So I've certainly had failures, shows that haven't worked, projects, development, whatever, I mean, shoots that have gone sideways, you name it. But I've learned from all those, and that's to be expected. And of course, at the time, you're in tears. You're thinking, I've blown it. I'm never going to work again. This was a disaster. And it's never as bad as it seems. And actually, you learn and you grow. Those are the biggest lessons. You'll never make that mistake again. So I don't regret anything like that. Perhaps what I sincerely wish I had made the most of was the time off. Occasionally you finish a project, you get 3 weeks before the next one starts, it just suddenly starts. But for those 3 weeks, you're petrified and you don't know whether you're going to work again. I never enjoyed those moments. And as someone that hasn't really stopped working now for 21 years, I wish I had. So I think if I could go back to myself, I would say, don't sweat it when the project ends. Enjoy the end of the show. I'd always be at the end of a project and not really enjoying the wrap party or whatever, because I'd be worried about the next thing. Don't sweat it. If you're, like I said, if you're decent at your job and you're good and you're a good person, you will continue. There's enough work to go around, because the genre is growing and has been ever since I've been on the train. So there's plenty of work to go around, as long as you're those two things.
Fantastic. I know Mehmet had a question which is pretty relevant to this kind of area before we move on to talk more generally about the TV landscape. Mehmet, I think you should be able to, Scott, you should be able to talk now if you're there.
Hi there.
I worked with Adam Scott not long ago. He's lovely. We did a show for us called Celebrity Escape Room. He was a celebrity on an escape room we built, and he was the nicest guy. So I had a good choice of picture.
I literally just saw that on YouTube yesterday.
And
I love that. Jack Black was hosting.
Yeah,
I was in a candy store. That was one of another favorite gig.
Sorry, Mehmet.
Sorry, Mehmet.
So my questions are, what advice do you have for someone who would like to work for a company like NBC or one of the companies that's within NBC in the future? And what can I do at this stage or once I graduate to try and get myself there?
I would say, I don't know how it works in the UK any longer, but certainly when I was early on, there are work placements. There's a page program for NBC, which is hard to get into, especially as an international, but that's their own internal system. But most companies do work placements, and that's a great way of sort of trying the company out and the company trying you out. And there are so many instances across my journey where someone has been on a work placement or a temp or whatever it may be. Everyone loves them, and then we hire them, we bring them in. It's the quickest way in the door. And you just need to look at how each company runs their placements, because some use agencies, some have strange names like the Page program, but really it's a form of temp or trial, and that gets you in the door, and then it helps you, back to my earlier point, helps you build relationships. You meet those people, you're interfacing, you're face to face. Hopefully we're not Zooming when it comes to you being able to do that. But when I was growing up in the UK, I did my first placement at 15. I don't know if that's still the case. Forgive me, I'm out of touch. But at 15, I went for 2 weeks work placement, and I was interfacing with people in TV. I knew from a young age what I wanted to do, and so that's why I went after it when I was 15. But have you looked at that, Mehmet? Is that something you've considered? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that is something that I am considering. But yeah, definitely, I would like to get my foot in the door with some of these larger companies, because I would like to work for larger companies and just make awesome content.
Yeah, well, Fremantle was a company I was at for the best part of a decade. They make some of the biggest entertainment shows in the UK, and they have a good program too. So just do a bit of research and, go ahead.
No, yeah, I was just going to say the same thing. Yeah, absolutely. People do their own research, but also if people reach out to our careers team, which is industry at rave.ac.uk. That's my least favorite thing, is typing an email while you're saying it out loud. But industry at rave.ac.uk. So that's the email for the careers team, which I know a lot of you will have been in touch with already, but we do have a long list of those people we have relationships with, of the list of internship schemes, of the list of kind of the best contacts to kind of maybe make that step kind of following graduation. And it does remain a big aim of kind of Ravensbourne and the industry team to look at kind of credited placements and placements as actually as part of kind of study. It's obviously a big part of fashion. Placements is like every kind of fashion course always has placements within it.
Right.
An editing course here has quite a lot of kind of placement opportunities. And we obviously encourage students to get involved in actual productions, while they're studying. But I think we'd love to kind of introduce, a proper formal internship opportunity as well, because we know there's the appetite there, both for the students and the companies. And like you say, it's so valuable for people to get that experience kind of within a real setting. All right, thank you so much, Mehmet.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Mehmet.
And then let's have a look. Precious had a question as well in the chat, but let me change that so you can ask your question as well.
Hi, Precious.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi. So I'm just going to reread my question. So I know you touched about sorry, I was unprepared for this.
Oh, that's all right, Precious. Just take a minute. Like you say, it's a perfectly good question. If you want, I can read it out for you, but if not, just take a minute and then just read it out.
Yeah. How are you able to maintain a good work balance without sacrificing your mental health and overworking due to fear of not booking the next job? I know you told us not to worry about not to just enjoy the production, but as a young student looking for a job right now and scared of always having to look for the next job and trying to, and in a sense, overworking yourself, do you have any advice and tips?
It's a really good question. And I think that's why I would like to go back and tell myself, chill out, because I didn't. And perhaps it wasn't the healthiest of times. But in retrospect, if I had relaxed a bit, I think it wouldn't have changed a thing. I was just worrying. I was in my own head. I was thinking, when is this next job coming? And it always did. I didn't change what I was doing because I was worrying. I was just wasting my brain on worrying. So I wish I could go back and tell myself to chill out. I guess that's what I'm trying to do for you. The hardest job is the first one, the second one, then the third, fourth gets easier, and then you won't look back. Those very first couple of jobs require a breakthrough. But once you've had it and you're on a decent sized show and you've met a decent amount of people, they'll disperse, move on to the next show, like I was saying, and so on. And so I guess, look, you always need a break. Production is relentless. And sometimes I was forced to make a break. And sometimes I didn't get one, but I never really took one. Christmas is always a time when production stops for 2 weeks. So I always knew I could travel over the holiday break, Christmas break. But I rarely took vacations between productions because I didn't want to miss out on the next job. What if I was traveling and then I got offered a gig and it's too competitive? So in those early years, it's the hardest. So I think you're at that point now where it's going to be the most difficult. But once you snag that first job, know that that's the hardest thing done. You've accomplished one of the hardest bits. And Ravensbourne can obviously help you with that. And even I can help you with that. I'm happy to, as much as I can from afar now. But once you've got that first gig, you can relax and focus on the job and the relationships and try and have a bit of fun, because that's what it's all about. We're making television here. It's supposed to be fun. And then as it comes to the end of that show, you want to make sure you understand where everyone's going. So I would say, hey, Precious, where are you off to next? And you would say, oh, I've got this other gig lined up. Oh, do you know if they're looking for whatever your role may be? Or what? And so you start those dialogues with multiple people. That's you in a subtle way, dispersing your resume. And you don't want to run around putting resumes in people's faces, but you want to understand where people are going and gently pursue them. So I feel like I may be rambling. I hope that's helpful. But in terms of taking a break, only you will know when you need one. And if I was doing shows that were 24-hour turnaround, on air the next day, filming all night, I'd be awake for 24 hours straight, shooting, editing, delivering, and then on air live. I did I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, and the first season of Love Island. And those shows were back then pretty hardcore. I think they've found ways to put less pressure on producers. You needed a break after that show, so you know when you need one and you can take one. But I'll be honest, it's hard. It's not a desk job. It's not a 9 to 5 where you schedule your vacation and you take it and you know you're going away in March. It's kind of different because it's a rat race. So those first few years do require you to probably be all in. But there is nothing more important than mental health. And I think finally the world's catching up with that. And I'm sure the pressure on someone coming into the industry at a young age is probably a little less than what it used to be for me 20 years ago. So I hope it's not as competitive or not as bad. I I truly don't know, but I guess try not to overthink it. Focus on doing a good job, focus on good relationships, and the rest will come. I promise it will. You don't have to worry about it. It will come, providing you're doing the former. Did I address it, or did I just ramble?
Yes, you did.
You can be honest with me.
No, you answered the question beautifully, because I thought I had to overwork myself for the rest of my career, but you just first few months, and that's basically uni. So if I can handle uni, I can do this.
Well said. Well said. If you can get uni, it was hard too. And now, as I'm as an executive, I have a family, 2 young kids. Yesterday I had to work. We had a bit of a crisis on a show. Those days happen, and my Sunday afternoon blew up. But for the most part, I now I'm sure my wife would still say I work too much, but I know I have a better work-life balance than I've ever had as I've gotten older. So it's definitely, and in your 20s, you can put more into it. You don't have kids, presumably. Most of you don't have children and families, and so you can go a bit more all in. That's the time to do it. But you will definitely be able to slow down and enjoy it more as you get older. Just don't sweat it. That's the message I wish I could give myself back then. It will be fine. Don't overthink it. Let it happen naturally. But you sound like you're getting it. So I wish you all the best, Precious.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Cheers. Thank you for that, Precious. We've got one question from Birat. Let me just add you so you can ask this question, which touches upon a little bit of what you've talked about already. But Birat, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
So I just really want to know, like, in the past, in your career, what's been like the most difficult moments, and how did you like overcome it? Like in terms of like working with someone that was difficult to work with, or a problem that came up with a show, and like what was it like? How did you fix it?
Had a lot. I'll be honest. There's been some horrible moments in my career. Very early on in the first year, I nearly quit. There was. Trying to think the best way to describe it. There was someone that was just horrible to me right when I started as a junior, as a runner. And I nearly quit. I remember going home thinking, this has all been a complete waste of time. I went to Ravensbourne, I went through college, all these years I wanted to be in TV. I'm done. It's horrible. But of course it isn't. That's just one bad apple ruining it for me. And I pushed through. And overcame it by just simply not just keeping my head down. And that person was around for a good year or so until I moved on and didn't have to deal with it anymore. But I remember hitting what felt like rock bottom as a 21-year-old and thinking I'm in the wrong industry. But I can tell you now that those people are in every industry, so that's ridiculous. You can't base your analysis on an industry on one person. I was foolish. I knew no better. But I managed to push through that one. And then, yeah, well, I've had some stinkers where I was doing a show for Sky One called The Race, which was celebrities racing in very high-powered, fast vehicles. It was only one series, you probably won't remember it, but one of the celebrities was very badly hurt, and that I remember thinking, this is the end of my career. Of course, it wasn't my fault. We had all the safety measures in place, but it was a very hard day for me, and I had to really think about, is this the career for me? It was very stressful. It was a stressful show, but you move on. And then later on in life, I've had bosses that weren't very nice, that I learned a lot from, because I learned how not to manage. So one other thing I want to share, off point a little bit, but what I think I've done over the years, looking back in retrospect, this was not a conscious decision, but I've taken all the best things I've learned from the best people I've worked with over the years to help shape me into a leader. I've learned little tricks, things you do to make people happy, motivate teams. And then equally, I've seen things that you don't do. And I saw them from the outset in my career where people were crying backstage, and I would find out why and be like, why are you being treated this way? That's not how I want to lead. And that shaped me. But yeah, later in life, I've had some bosses that were toxic, and you just have to push through, right? So quitting is not an option, in my opinion. I've left one show in my career, and that was to move to the US. An opportunity came up over here while I was producing a show for the BBC. And so I had to resign early, and I did it as diplomatically as possible, but it was not, that's how you burn bridges and damage relationships and potentially prevent work from coming. And I remember one of the production managers said, you're ruining your career doing this, you're burning so many bridges. And I really had to think carefully. And I was hoping I would move to the US and not have to come back and it wouldn't matter. And sure enough, that's what happened. So it was the right decision at the time. But yeah, I've definitely had some bosses or leaders or executive producers or whatever it may be that were not nice, and I did not agree with their management style. And you can push back to a certain degree, it depends how bad it is, right? But you can certainly say, well, that's not fair, or stick up for someone like you would in any environment. And I've certainly tried to do that across my life. And then the great thing about my line of work is being freelance. The job ends after 3 months or 6 months. It's not like I'm working in a bank and I'm stuck with the bank manager is toxic and I'm there for a decade. And so best as you can, you manage the moment if it's a toxic work environment, and then move on from it because it's temporary. So I guess that's how I've gotten through that. But in my most recent role, I'm constantly, I call myself a firefighter, ironically. An old colleague gave me that title because I'm constantly putting out fires. That's what it's doing now at my level. There are mostly you're dealing with problems. So I've got quite good at it. And I've always, I forget where I got this from. It's certainly not something I coined, but you can't rarely can you prevent a problem occurring. It's not really about the problem and why it happened. It's about how you handle it. So we have a production right now where we've got I've never had something like this happen before. It's quite a big scale. We're pausing production. We're managing an issue that no one could have prevented, but it's just about how we cope with it in the moment, right? And it's a very stressful moment. There's hundreds of people that need communication, and I just take it one step at a time, and luckily have fantastic colleagues that help us all through it, and we rally around. So yeah, problem solving is now a massive part of my job. But I guess overcoming things in the moment is, back to your initial question, whatever it may be, is just taking it piecemeal, right? Don't freak out, especially if you're on live television or you've got a deadline. There's no point getting overwhelmed, and you will do if you step back and you look at everything and go, this is a massive problem. I would always go in and look at what can I do? What are the steps can I take to accomplish or overcome this issue? I think I answered it.
Yeah.
And I always drop in a few other little things, so I apologize if I go off topic. But Berat, how did I do?
Yeah, thanks for answering my question.
All
right then. Well, we've got about 10 minutes left, so maybe just one or two more general questions, and then I think we're probably at the end of our time, Toby.
Sure.
So I guess, shall I ask the broadest question in the world? Okay, so sorry. Has streaming really changed the television landscape? Has it altered it as much as people would say it has?
Yes, the short answer is that yes, it has. It has changed the landscape, mainly how we consume things, because no longer are you forced to watch at the cadence that a broadcaster wants you to watch. Once a week, 8 o'clock on a Wednesday, let's say. I think those days are numbered. But I look at streaming as a massive upside to the business, because it's just created more opportunity to create content. It's insatiable now. There are more shows being made than ever. It's a great time to be entering the industry, in my opinion. It's just different. It's just a different model. It's less about, obviously on streamers, it's not about advertising, it's about keeping people subscribed. So the more content they deliver, the less churn they have. Churn is just people unsubscribing, coming back. So yeah, there was fear when it started. I remember when Netflix decided to go into non-scripted or alternative, everyone was nervous, but actually they bought 35 non-scripted shows in the space of a few months. And I sold a couple myself in my previous job. So it was actually a good thing. And sure enough, now they're making more and more. So the volume has just increased. It's just, we just consume it in a different way. And what's clear is right now, certain shows are working on one platform, a streaming platform, and then certain shows are working well on broadcast still. So question that I'm often asked, and I don't quite know the answer truthfully, but would The Masked Singer, which we've discussed is a hit right now, would that work on Netflix? Maybe not, right? Because you might just fast forward to the end. You go straight to the final. You watch episode 1. You go, oh, okay, now who's who, and you just go to the end. But the drip feeding of a broadcaster keeps it a success, keeps it in the zeitgeist. Everyone talking week after week after week. If you think about a Netflix show, when it drops and if it's a big hit, everyone talks about it. But then it disappears very quickly because you've watched it all in one sitting, 2 or 3 sittings. Whereas broadcast forces you to stretch it out over 10 weeks, Britain's Got Talent or whatever it may be. So those kind of shows are yet to work on a streamer. I think they will. In the end, it's inevitable. But those big tentpole ITV, BBC shows, The Voice, does that work on a streamer? Yeah, not yet, but it will. So yes, it's changed how we consume. It has definitely changed the business. But broadcast is still where you go for an event. It's where you go for something now. Sports, obviously, and certainly a live show like Britain's Got Talent. So I think it's been nothing but a blessing. It's just forced us all to think a little differently and pivot, which is, when you really think about it, it happens all the time. It's just accelerated in our business, certainly because of COVID. Forcing everyone at home has all it's done is accelerate what was going to happen. Broadcast or the channels over here are being less. Their numbers are down. They've had a huge decline during COVID, and I think everyone's just streaming, and it's just gotten us there quicker. But there are still success stories even on broadcast now. So I think it's ultimately, I look at it in summary, more screens, more ways to watch stuff, which is great for content creators.
Yeah, and it's been fascinating to see the amount of, I guess, what you would call prestige drama on streaming that is now being released on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
Which I think is absolutely their attempt to, whether it's Mandalorian or whether it's like Netflix shows.
That's working well.
Where, you know, Disney certainly wants that zeitgeist feel of kind of a weekly release. You know,
very important to the business, I think.
Okay, Precious, did you want to ask that quick question about?
Yeah, you were mentioning about how streaming service haven't really done that format of prolonging the talk about show, but Netflix is trying out this new system I've found this summer. Like last year, there was this great show that I'm sadly have to admit that I watched, was called Too Hot to Handle.
I loved it. I love that show. No, don't be ashamed. It's a brilliant show.
It was amazing. And I watched my sister and brother who was sadly locked with me during lockdown. I'm not sure if it's a bad thing. But we watched it and we realized this year that they kind of changed the way they're dropping it. And so they're dropping it weekly, I think, with the last episode shown a month after, to I think also prolong the talk and the hype of the show. Do you think this new system, as you mentioned, will disturb the traditional TV? Because if Netflix can hack the system, what hopes is there for TV?
Yeah, great question, and it's a fantastic show. I know the program makers well, even the executive at Netflix who oversees that show. His name's Sean Hancock. And he's a dear friend of mine. I know how hard he's been working on season 2, and it drops in a couple of weeks, I believe. So credit to Sean Hancock and Fremantle that makes that show. We'll talk back Thames, I think. So yes, I think for the exact reason I was describing, that they're trying to make it more zeitgeisty. You dump it all on the service in one go. Everyone watched it in a weekend. You talk about it for a week and it's over. Now this gives them much more, many more weeks, I hope, of people talking about it. The problem Netflix has got with that model is it's not traditionally how people consume their content. People like and know in their brain subconsciously, Netflix is where I can just go, and I can watch 6 back to back if I wish. And so for them, it's experimental. They've done it with a few others, but it's not how they did season 1. So it'll be really interesting for them to try this out and see how well it does, and see what data that provides. And I think I may have said before, I think in the end, it's inevitable. I think it will go this way. They're going to, just like Disney, as you say, Jim, The Mandalorian has done it so well. Love that show too. I think that Netflix will find, people will get used to these shows being that way, or certain shows being that way. But right now, it's just difficult, I think, for our brains to understand that on that particular platform. But they're watching everyone else do it so well, so they're rethinking their process. So yeah, it's an experiment. Time will tell. But I'm confident that show is so good. I think it will probably work for them, and that will start, I believe, the transition. Either this show or another show in the future, but we'll get there with Netflix. And then shows like The Voice or Britain's Got Talent will live on Netflix, because you'll know I go there once, or every Friday it drops. So yeah, it's coming. It's just them changing their process a little.
Cheers, thanks for that. And I guess one final question then. Is there any innovation in television? Is there any technical development that's kind of moving forward at the moment? Any particular thing you would just say to a graduating class or to some current students, like keep an eye on this or have this in your pocket? I know that's a lot if there isn't, but if there is anything that's being used now that wasn't there 2 years ago.
It's a good question. I don't know, not so much in our, everyone was really big on VR for a while. That seems to have gone a little quiet. But for us, there's always new camera technology, but still, it's nothing that's changing the game. And I'm sure I'm going to kick myself, because I'll think of something later today. I'll go, oh, of course.
You can always send an email through if you said.
Yeah, I can always send an update. I think one of the biggest things that has happened because of the pandemic, that we're editing shows from home. That's nuts at the scale that we make a show. It's one thing to cut a project on your laptop, but when the pandemic hit, we had just wrapped a show called World of Dance with Jennifer Lopez. It's a dancing competition show, and season 2 of the Time Games with The Rock. And those shows were traditionally cut in one building across 20 edit bays, all sharing the same media. And to then send everyone home and to be able to work remotely, to be able to cut a project, and I will be able to look at projects here while multiple editors are working across from home across different areas. That's unprecedented, and that's something that's just happened overnight that none of us would have suspected or expected to do. And I love sitting in an edit bay and tweaking a show and working with the team to get it right. But I think that's changed forever now. I think it's one of the big things that, because of COVID, we'll all end up back in the office, whether it's 3 days, 4 days, 5 days a week. Inevitably, we're all going to be back in the office. But I think editors will still work from home. And not all of them, and maybe there's days they come in for a big viewing, but they go home and they tweak. But the access to the media, remote access to the media, is something that happened overnight, and I think will be with us forever.
Cheers! Thank you so much for that, Toby. That's fantastic.
You're welcome.
I'm sure I join everyone else to say thank you, for spending an hour with us, look, we hope to welcome you to Ravensbourne next time travel becomes a little bit more realistic. Next time you're over in England, please pop in. Yeah, and we'll also look at what we can do, maybe for how you can maybe have a bit more involvement with the TV course going forward. Look at some ways we can have you involved next year. We're all going to enjoy a bit of a summer after a very long academic year, I think, for everyone at this point. But let's look and see how we can do that. But otherwise, look, I know it's very early. I know your children are going to be getting up. So have a great day, and thank you so much.
You bet. Thank you, everyone. I wish you all the best. And I hope lockdown ends as it should in a week or two, and you get to enjoy your well-earned summer. But thanks for being with me today. It's been an honor to talk to you all.
Thank you.